Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for registering and attending Cross Country's Sage Intacct 2026 R2 release webinar. We're really excited to walk you through some of the newest features available in the R2 release and to show how these updates can bring real value to your team. Before we get started, there are a few housekeeping items for today's session. All attendees will be muted throughout the presentation. To earn CPE credits, you must attend for at least 50 minutes and respond to a minimum of 3 polling questions, which will appear on your screen at various points during the session. And lastly, if you have any questions during today's demo, please use the Q&A feature. Our post-production support team will do our best to respond to your questions throughout the session, and if you stay with us until the end, we'll also have dedicated time for additional Q&A. So here's a look at today's agenda. First, we'll introduce our facilitators, your cross-country Sage Intacct PPS team, and share a brief overview of our PPS offerings. Then we'll jump into a live demo of the exciting new R2 features. And finally, we'll wrap up with a quick summary and open it up for a Q&A session. To kick things off, a quick introduction of today's facilitators from our PPS team. Many of you already know us from previous webinars and through PPS tickets, so I'll keep this brief. I'm Ashley, and I'll be your moderator for today's webinar. We also have Ginger Steele, James Fluke, and new to the PPS team and joining us for our first release webinar today is Lisa Medina. Lisa is a manager on our Sage Intacct service line, and she's a CPA with 12 plus years of Sage Intacct experience as both an implementer and an end user. With 10 plus years of accounting experience with a strong foundation in month-end close, financial reporting, and operational accounting. And so we're really excited to have her on the team and on the session today. And so now we'll go ahead and move into today's objectives. Our objectives for this webinar are to familiarize you with the key features introduced in the R2 release so that you can explain 2 or more new enhancements, show you how these updates can bring value to your organization, and also help you prepare your system and your teams to take advantage of these new features and the impacts that may be associated with them. And lastly, we'll also share our 5 cross-country PPS support offerings. Now, to kick things off, we'll launch our first polling question. How prepared is your team for the R2 release? Please take a few seconds to submit your response. Okay, so thank you so much for sharing. Whether you're feeling fully ready or still preparing, that's exactly why we're here today, to make sure you walk away equipped with the knowledge that you need. Next, we wanted to quickly highlight our full suite of post-production support services. Many of you may already be familiar with our offerings, but our PPS team is here to support you throughout the entire year. And our goal is to help you maximize the value of your Sage Intacct investment, not just during releases, but at every single stage. Our 5 key PPS offerings, which cover everything from day-to-day operational assistance to enhancement support and more, are operational support, enhancement projects, system health checks, integrations, and release management. And release management is especially relevant for today. Our team assesses the impact of every release, and we help you manage adoption so you can take advantage of these new features without disrupting your operations. And so with that, we'll go ahead and move into our second polling question. Do you feel like you're getting the most out of Sage Intacct? Please take a few seconds to answer. Okay, so thank you again for your responses. So whether you're fully optimized or know that there's room to grow, we're hopeful that today's session sparks some ideas. And so now I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to James, who will go ahead and kick off our live demo.
Thanks, Ashley. Let me know when you can see my screen.
Yep, you're good.
Thank you. All right, hi everyone. Today I'll be covering 4 features from the R2 release, the new roles and permissions report, some additions to the import service, a brief look at the AI gateway, and a couple of updates to AP automation. The first feature I want to jump into is the new roles and permissions report. This feature was introduced due to customer feedback. Prior to this release, if you wanted to track what permissions a role had, it required cross-referencing multiple screens and piecing it together manually, or creating a custom report through the custom report writer. However, Sage has included this as a dedicated standard report now. The roles permission report pulls together a point-in-time snapshot of every permission assigned to a role. To run the report, you want to navigate to the application menu, select Company, select the Admin tab. Under History and Reports, you'll see a new option for Roles Permission Report. Go ahead and select that. Within this report, you have the option to filter for a specific role name and a time period. The time period or date range here will control when the role was created. If you want to return all roles, we can go ahead and just clear this date range out, leave your role name blank, and select View. And this report will give you a consolidated look at all of your different roles, the modules that they have permissions to, and the actual permissions within that module. This gives you a quick unified view of both standard and custom permissions side by side, so you're not jumping between screens to compare. And then it's also useful as a quick validation for any type of audit prep or just confirming role permissions. One thing to note is that this is a current state snapshot. It only shows you permissions that they exist when the report is run. It's not a historical audit trail, and it isn't meant to track changes over time. This report is available to run as a business user with admin privileges, and you'll also need to assign a new permission, the roles permission report run permission within the admin module. This is available for companies within all regions and that are using role-based configuration specifically. The next features I'll cover are some additions to the import service. So the import service is Sage's modern replacement to the older CSV import functionality. The idea is kind of just having a single centralized area and a consistent workflow for getting data into Intacct, regardless of what you're importing. The import service allows you to load your file, map the fields, preview and validate the data before committing it to an upload. There's also a rollback feature before anything goes live, which is useful in case there are any issues with your file. The import service also has some cool AI assist components built into it that can help you with field mapping, such as like splitting a field for a name into like a full first middle name field, combining columns, and some additional mapping functionality. To access the import service, you want to navigate to Company, Setup tab, and Import Data. This will bring you to the company setup checklist, and you'll have a link for the new import service here. I've taken some minutes to load, so I've gone here and opened up on a separate page for you here to just give you a kind of brief look at what it looks like. The new release adds 2 new import functionality that are both currently in the beta state. So these new imports are one, AR advances, so it gives you the option to create and update AR advances through the import service, while the other is related to ownership structure for consolidation. So this gives you the opportunity to load and update consolidation ownership structures and ownership structure periods, which is relevant for companies that are using advanced ownership consolidations and multi-entity environments. One thing to note here is that these new import types are both in beta status, meaning that they are only available to customers that are currently enrolled in the beta program. All customers are welcome and invited to sign up for the beta program. In order to do that, you can do it from the release notes. So in order to access the release notes and the sign up sheet, if you were to navigate to Intacct, head over to your homepage. You'll see read the release notes as a link here. Go ahead and select that, open them up. Within the company administration option, select the Sage Intacct import service. Down at the bottom of this page, you'll see a link here for sign up for beta access. And then they'll give you the opportunity to, go in and get access to these new import functionalities and help test as they roll out new features. The next feature I want to transition to is going to be the AI gateway. So the AI gateway is a connectivity layer between Sage Intacct and external AI tools or custom applications that you want to build outside of the native Intacct experience. The basic idea here is that your financial data lives in Intacct, and the gateway gives users and developers a secure, governed way to connect that data to whatever AI workflow or application they're building. The access to the connected AI tools controlled by the authenticated user's permissions. So whichever user kind of goes through and sets up that authentication, what they are able to see and do in the UI is what the AI application or LLM can see on their behalf. The AI gateway will leverage REST APIs for custom applications, which gives full read and write access. That's probably for custom applications. That's probably a little bit more geared toward developers, but something that is a little bit more relevant for day-to-day users is the ability to connect to like an LLM through an MCP server or model context protocol. Basically allows you to connect to like an LLM of your choice, such as Claude, ChatGPT, pretty much anything that supports MCP connectivity with read-only access. So the MPC is a standard that lets AI tools connect to business systems in a structured way, and kind of think of it as a standardized connection port for your AI applications. With that connection to the MCP server through like an LLM such as Claude, you can basically query data from your system using kind of just normal language. One example that I like to use for clients is, maybe you're trying to drive cash flow. You want to take a look at your customers with your top 10 customers based on their total balance due. You can, have your connected LLM, type in a prompt for it to pull your top 10 customers with balance due, and then it will query your data and return that within the LLM itself. Yeah. You could also, with Claude, build kind of custom dashboards on the fly, which can be pretty helpful. I did want to demo this for you guys today, but unfortunately, I was running into some connectivity and authorization issues with our Claude connection.
Yeah. James,
Um,
James, I
yeah,
apologize. I'm not sure if we were seeing it, but there was a question if you could share the permissions that the admin needs to run that report.
Yeah,
Is that
absolutely. So
possible?
within here, we could go company, admin, and then roles, whichever role you want to go ahead and assign this to. Select subscriptions. Within the administration subscription, you should see this new permission here for roles permission report. Go ahead and check that, save, and then save. One thing to note, is that if you want to run this report, you do need a business user with admin privileges. Yep, thank you, Ginger.
Thank you.
Yep, no problem. Moving back into the Sage AI Gateway, right? Why this is important is that, it allows your team to kind of build custom AI workflows on top of your financial data, kind of just outside of what Sage Copilot can handle natively. And this is really just the path to allow you to do that in a supported and audible way, where you're able to control the logic and the data that the LLM or AI tool can access. This functionality is geared toward customers and partners who are enabled for web services developer license. Um, and then that, in turn, the web service developer license also needs to be AI enabled, which does carry a small subscription component of additional about $300 per year for that. If you're interested in setting up connection to an MCP server or just around the AI gateway in general, we'll include some resources to the Sage Intacct developer page on this. And also, you can feel free to reach out to us if you want some help in setting that up or just some more information in general.
Thank you. James,
Yeah.
on the last item that you were just showing, we were seeing the homepage of
Yeah.
Sage Intacct. Was
Mhm.
there a
No,
different?
not a whole lot to
Okay.
demo on that one, unfortunately,
Okay.
since I was running into some authentication issues. Yeah. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you.
Mhm. Um, but yeah, if you're interested in this, we'll provide some resources. This link to the Sage developer page, and then also feel free to reach out through PPS channels, and we can help you in getting that set up. Next, I'll go through a couple of updates to AP automation. So AP automation has a couple of usability updates this release. Not a whole lot of major changes, but some really nice kind of day-to-day updates to relieve any pain points in your workflows. The first enhancement is around flexible line entry methods for bills. So previously, line entry format for an automated bill, whether it used single line summary or broke out for all individual line items, was set up front within your email service configuration or at upload, and you are locked into that before reviewing the document. Intacct has added the functionality to be able to change that on the fly, so you can now change that directly from the draft bill when you're reviewing it. So if we're to go and take a look at an accounts payable bill that's been uploaded via AP automation, like this example here, select edit. You'll now see within the entries layout that you have an entry methods selection. So you can change this from an all line items, or to a single line summary. Um, so the system will create the drop bill automatically. Oh, sorry, wrong. So now you can change the line entry format directly on the bill while you're reviewing it. If you realize a different format is better for a particular bill, you're able to go ahead and change that on the fly. One thing I do want to call out for this is that this is only applicable for AP bills. If you're using PO automation, it's not currently supported for PO automation. The next enhancement is the ability to upload bills directly into the automated transaction list. So this is relevant for teams that are using both AP automation alongside purchasing automation. So previously, you had to move between two lists for automated transactions within your AP and purchasing modules. This release kind of consolidates that a little bit. You'll be able to see bills uploaded either through AP or purchasing within the same automated transaction list. So the system will create the drop bills automatically, and it'll appear in both those lists. And the system will give you an option to move that either to accounts payable or purchasing. Excuse me. So if the system predicts it as a purchasing transaction, it should be an AP bill item. You're able to just go ahead and convert that, and then you can set that preference for a vendor going forward. So that's it for me with this. Quick recap of what we covered here was the new roles permissions report, some updates, the import service, a brief discussion around the AI gateway, and some key changes to AP automation. I'll now hand it over to Lisa to go over some additional features.
Thanks, James. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Let me know when you guys see it up.
Yeah.
Thanks. Okay, so I'll be going over the updates in AR, so accounts receivable, order entry, and cash management. So I'll go ahead and start with accounts receivable. There's a new feature now to process customer refund payments through accounts payable. So they've added this refund section where you can configure accounts receivable page to amend, and amend customer and vendor records to support refunding that customer through accounts payable. So Intacct will automatically create a linked accounts payable bill that mirrors the refund from AR. So basically, it's going to generate this link for that bill and process so that you can process it and still link it to AR. So if you have AR credit memos, advances that are sitting there that the client wants to have paid out to them instead of having it applied against a future invoice, now you'll be able to issue them the refund instead of doing it offline, through your bank or ACH. So, for example, if you're a family office client and an LP overpays a capital invoice, or in general, like if you have a client that pays twice for the same invoice, or a customer returns products and wants the cash back versus a credit memo, someone cancels their subscription, whatever the case is, now you can do it all through the system and you can issue the bill in AP. So this is a huge win for separation of duties. So for all you audit folks, this is huge, right? Because AR staff can still control whether the refund is issued, and then the AP staff will control how and when the money goes out. So you have that segregation. AR still controls that portion. AP will control the disbursements portion. And because the refund is a bill, all your approval processes, everything that you have set up in AP will still apply to that. So they'll still be linked natively so that the auditors and controllers can still trace the full life cycle without hunting down, across different modules or reconciling manual entries. So before you even do a refund, there's a few things that you have to set up. First thing, of course, permissions, right? So in your user profile, you'll see this new permission in accounts receivable that you have to give them at least list view add permissions to do this. You want to make sure that they can still edit, add or edit the customers so that you can enable that in the customers as well. Once you update the permissions, you'll want to create a new journal. So under general ledger setup, you want to create a new refunds journal for all of these transactions. You can do it through a regular one, but separated is recommended. And then you want to create a document sequencing. So under company setup, you want to go to document sequences to create a document sequence for these refunds. For the purpose of demonstration, I tried to make it obvious, so calling it refund dash number. You can do RF, R, however you like. And then you'll need a liability account. I created a separate one. We want a refund due to customer, client, some kind of a liability account that those transactions will be tagged to. And it'll be cleared when you create that accounts payable bill. So once you have all of those set up, you'll need permissions to be able to configure the AR module. So usually an admin will configure the AR module to enable this. So under accounts receivable, setup, configuration, you'll find a section for refunds. So initially, you'll see this record paid refunds. This will only allow you to record it. So if you were doing offline checks and ACHs to refund the customers, you will select that. But this is the new feature here where you can process the refund in accounts payable. And this was actually an idea from the community that they selected. So they look at that, make sure you guys vote for all the ideas. And here's where you'll put in your GL account that you created. Summary frequency, we recommend one per refund to make it a clean audit trail. Journal, you can put in that refunds journal that you created, and then document sequence, the refunds one. And then go ahead and save. So once you do that, you'll have to update the customer profile. So under AR, customers, you want to edit whichever customer you're trying to refund. I created a separate one just for this so you can see. And in the customer profile, you'll see a refunds tab. So here you can select to auto-generate a vendor. If you select this, once you hit save, it will automatically create a vendor for you so that the bill can be issued to that customer. If you have a vendor already, there will be a field here where you can just select which vendor you want to link it to, that refund. Okay, so now we'll go in and actually do the refund. So here you'll see the refund section. I'm going to go ahead and add my refund. You'll select your customer that you want to refund when you want it to post, and this payment method is what drives it. So typically in the past, you can record the transfer and say like, hey, I paid it, I paid them out of this bank. But now if you hit the drop down, you'll see this process in AP. So I'm going to hit process in AP, select your currencies, and here you'll see that credit memo and an advance if you had any. So you can select to pay it all, or you can just pay a portion of it. If I just want to refund them, $500 of their overpayment for now. Once you post it, it'll create a bill for you. So if you go under accounts payable, bills, you'll see that refund there. And if you view the refund, you'll see that it links you back to the original refund. So this bill will be linked to that original AR refund for audit purposes and for that audit trail. Next, I'll go over some of the updates in currency. So this applies actually in AR and in AP. Some currency updates is more of a visual update. In the posted payments for both AP and AR, they've enhanced the multi-currency payment posting so that you can distinguish between the bank account currency for the cash receipt or the cash payment, the disbursements. And you can see, you can distinguish between like the invoice and bill currencies as well. So this will help you follow the money trail more easily when you apply payments to bank accounts using a currency that's different, right, from the invoice and bank currency. So you'll see this both in the posted payment section in AP and AR. So I'll go over it in AR and it applies the same in AP as well. So here under accounts receivable, if I'm looking at posted payments, you can see here that you'll have the transaction currency, and if you scroll over, you have the base currency, but the new update here is you'll be able to see the bank currency. So the currency that you used to pay it and what amount that was in that currency. So the same thing is in AP as well. So if you were to go to AP, posted payments, same visual where you see the bank, base, and transaction. So this also applies. You'll see this in the registers and the ledgers as well. So it's here. So in accounts receivable and in AP, you'll see registers and you'll see like the receipts and the sales. So same thing in AP where you have the registers, you have the bills and the checks. So for the portion for the register that has to do with the payment, so the payment receipt or the payment disbursements, so AKA the receipts and the check register, you'll see these in the bank currency. So here, if I am going into the receipts register, you'll see that these amounts are going to be in the bank's currency already. And then on the flip side, for the sales and the bills register, you'll see those in the transaction currencies. So here's the sales register. I put it here. If, GBP 10,000, you'll see that here. Canadian invoice and a USD invoice. So you'll see these in the transaction currencies. So now there are some cash management updates. So these are more quick updates here for the bank transactions. They limited the visibility of bank transactions based on user level entity restrictions, meaning that if you enable user entity restrictions for bank and credit card accounts, those restrictions will also apply to transactions. So even top level users will only be able to view transactions for those accounts that are within their assigned entities. So if you go to cash management, setup, configuration, if you have this selected, enable user entity restrictions for bank and credit card accounts, now this will apply so that top level users will only be able to see those bank transactions for whichever entity that they're assigned to or whichever accounts that are assigned to those entities. Other cash management updates are creation rules. So like those bank creation rules, they're now safeguarding against using the same account for both sides of the transactions. So you can't debit and credit the same account. So this will prevent errors of creating duplicate journal entries. So now if you're trying to do something like that, it's going to error when you try to add or edit a rule if it has, the same debit and credit account. Also, something that you guys might enjoy, this idea came from you guys, is when you create a transaction in the bank reconciliation screen, typically those transactions, they used to default to today's date, which doesn't make sense, right? Because you're always creating transactions for something that already happened. So now it's not going to have a date at all so that you can designate whatever date you want. So it won't default it so that you won't accidentally, post something to today when it would have been a different, it would have been a different date. So those are the cash management updates. For order entry, in release one, in R1, they came out with the billing groups. So under order entry, billing groups, it used to be under the setup menu, but now it moved over to the all. So this was the feature where you can manage multiple client billings at once who have similar things. So like management quarterly fees, if you have like a group of clients that you bill management quarterly fees, or if you're a property manager and you have CAM charges and you have like certain tenants that you bill the same amount, you can now bill them in a group. So now you can do like, flat rate support plans, anything like that. So that was R1 release. In addition to that, for this release is just a few things. So navigationally, they moved the menu in the billing group itself. They updated the schedule frequency type here. If I was to add a new one, they added a couple frequency types, so semi-monthly and end of the month. They removed the days. They removed the days one just because they wanted to align with common billing practices. It doesn't really make sense. So those are updates on the visual side. For individual charges, so in individual charges, you'll see a tab now. So if I was to save this billing group, once you save it, you'll see a tab for individual charges. So here, within this billing group, if you wanted to charge one of the clients, like a one-time fee, now you can do that. And this was an idea from you guys as well through the idea portal. So here you can select that this customer gets a one-time fee, and others will get a recurring one. You can also create it under order entry here, individual charges, where you can select which billing group they're in. So I just want to charge one person out of the whole billing group. You can do this one time, multiple times. And in the customer field, now they updated the customer record so that if you're viewing a customer, you'll see this billing groups tab, and you can see all the billings that this customer is part of. Yeah.
Lisa,
So,
there's a quick question. Where are the billing groups pulling the data from as far as like where those groups are? Or can
yeah.
that be configured per your instance? If you could do that real fast.
Yep. So that was part of the R1 release if you want to go back to that. But high level, when you create your billing group, if you're trying to do like a group, if you're trying to do a group charge and you're trying to bill, like let's say this group is like the CAM charges, quarterly ones, quarterly CAM charges or quarterly management fees, right? You'll create the invoice the invoice type, maybe it's a management fee. And then down here, you can select a customer group that you have already created. So if I have like my quarterly client group, or you can just select them here, manually select them individually. Like I want to, these customers are my quarterly billed ones.
Thank you, Lisa.
Okay, thank you. Um, So for the individual charges, yeah. So once you save it, you'll see that individual charge there. The AR, you'll see that billing group so that you can have that there. For the invoice run, so if it's not time, let's say your schedule is not scheduled to post until the end of the month, or um, or you scheduled it for the end of, semi-monthly, but now you want to just post it right now. You can do an invoice run. So you can do an invoice run. So in that billing group itself, let me just go back to my billing group. I want to be able to post those invoices already. So I go here, more actions, and you can hit start invoice run. And then it'll process for a little bit. It's going to do like a, execution. That's fine. Recent period. I already executed it, so you want to see it there. So then once you see that, you'll be able to see the invoice run. So here's the invoice run, and then those are the invoices that were generated. My one-time fee, my recurring fees. Um, so lastly is are emails. So the last thing in order entry is that you're able to customize sender and reply to emails for order entry communications. So when you send out an invoice through order entry, now you can actually customize who you're sending it from. So the sender and who they're going to be replying to. So first you have to enable it enable the email addresses in your company settings. So when you go into company, setup, company, I'll just hit edit here. In your security tab, you'll scroll down and you'll see a section for allowed email addresses. So you can list those email addresses here. So I have about 4. And once you have them there, when you go into order entry, and let's say you're printing or you're emailing out a document, now you'll see that you can designate who you wanted to send from. So those are all the customizations for all the new updates for AR, order entry, and cash management. And now I'll go ahead and pass it off to Ashley.
Thank you, Lisa. Go ahead and share my screen. Let me know once you can all see it.
Yep, we
Yep.
can.
Okay, thank you. So Sage Intacct has invested heavily in fixed assets management this release, and we have 6 enhancements to cover. So one quick note on the order of today's demo, and this is something that's worth understanding for your own configuration too, is that a couple of these features depend on a configuration setting called correction treatment, in which it has 2 options, revert and reverse, and that setting is permanent once you set it, and it determines which features you can actually use within the application. And so I'm going to walk you through the revert mode features first, and then we'll go into another environment with the configuration to reverse mode toward the end, so that way I can show you the reverse mode features. So if we navigate to Fixed Assets Management, Setup in the configuration, under Journals and Accounts, you'll see correction treatment. And so by default, everyone is configured to revert, which will delete records and entries. And so first up, we will discuss splitting an asset into multiple assets. And so the classic use case is maybe you have an asset that was originally recorded, but operationally you needed to track pieces of it separately. So previously, this required manual workarounds, creating new assets and manual journal entries. And so now with R2, it lets you split an asset directly from the asset record into up to 20 independent assets, and Sage Intacct keeps everything connected behind the scenes. And so on my assets list, I'll go ahead and pick an asset that's in ready for review or in service date, because those are the only states where you can actually split. And then here on the top right corner, you'll now see this split action. So if I go ahead and click split, here on the split screen, I'll go ahead and pick a split date. And so I'll just keep it as is for today's date. And then I'm going to go ahead and enter in a few rows here where I'm going to split it into different assets. And so we'll go ahead and do server 1. I'm going to enter in an asset cost of 4,000. I'm going to keep my salvage value at 0. I'm going to go ahead and add another row here. Keep this one at 4,000 with a $0 salvage value. And so the system does enforce that the total cost of all these new assets has to equal the original asset cost, and that's the same for salvage value. And if you were to enter in, again, you can split this asset into different assets. Just make sure that it all adds up to that original asset cost. And so I'll go ahead and click split here. Once I click split, a few things happen automatically. So that original asset state changes to split, and any unposted depreciation periods on the original asset are going to be marked as canceled. And so posting periods will stay posted, which preserves your historical accuracy, but everything after that is canceled. And then the new assets inherit those posted periods as historically posted. So if I go back to my splits tab, I can see that I split it and it has every asset that I split it into. And if I go ahead and drill into one of those, that depreciation is allocated proportionally based on each new asset's share of that original cost. And so just a few things to note. An asset that's been split can't be edited, deleted, or split again. However, these new assets can be split one more time, so you'll still see that split button here. They also can't be reverted back to a we're ready for review state. So you'll notice that the state is by default set to in service. And so that just means there's going to be a limited set of fields you can edit on these new assets, like name, quantity, dimensions, and any custom fields, but none of the financial fields can be edited. So that just makes sure that depreciation math stays clean. And so next up is reverting partial disposal. So if you've ever done a partial disposal in Sage Intacct and then realized that it was wrong, your only option used to be a manual journal entry to back it out. And then you'd have to manually adjust the depreciation schedule too. And so R2 adds a revert action for partial disposals directly on the Assets New Disposals tab. Disposals that have been moved to a dedicated disposals tab on assets as well. So previously disposal details were buried on the overview tab, but now they have their own home, which makes them much easier to find and review. And so if we go ahead and go to my asset list, and I'll go ahead and select chairs, this one. And if I go to my disposals tab, this is the new tab that I was just talking about, and I have a partial disposal record here. If I click on the more actions, which is the three dots, you do have to move a little bit to the right here to see that. I can click on the revert option. And if I go ahead and confirm this, Sage Intacct will go ahead and do three things automatically. One, it deletes that reverted partial disposal journal entries. It removes the partial disposal record from the disposals tab, and it restores the depreciation schedules and amounts back to where they were before the disposal. And a couple of things to know here is that if you revert the most recent partial disposal first, you'll need to do it first before you can revert an earlier one. And you can only revert a partial disposal if there's been no subsequent transactions. So that's like any transfers, depreciation expense, if they've been posted for that asset after the disposal date. So really this functionality with reverting a partial disposal is mainly just like a cleanup tool for any recent mistakes that you've made. Next up in construction in progress with our CIP assets, we're getting two really nice enhancements in this release. First, you can now specify a capitalization date when you capitalize a CIP asset. So previously, capitalization always used the current date, which was a real problem if you needed to backdate to align with maybe a project completion date or even a month-end close that was already in progress. And then second, you can also now revert a capitalization. So previously, once a CIP asset was capitalized, you couldn't undo it. But if you needed to add more costs or fix something, you were again stuck with manual workarounds. So here I have one of my CIP assets. If I go ahead, I'll notice now that I have a capitalize button here. So if I go ahead and click on capitalize, this will go ahead and open up a window that includes that capitalization date field. And you should pick the date that aligns with your accounting timeline, but do note that it has to be on or after the asset's acquisition date and also in an open period. But if I go ahead and click capitalize here, That date is what's going to be used for my journal entry moving costs from the CIP GL account to my asset GL account. And the capitalization date now displays right here, right on the asset CIP tab, so that way you have it for easy reference. And now let's say I made a mistake and I need to undo this. As long as the asset is still in a ready for review state, I can go ahead and click on my three dots here, which is the more actions, and I can hit revert capitalization. I'll go ahead and click revert. And now my asset is going to move back into that construction in progress state, and the capitalization journal entry now has been deleted. So now that we've seen the revert mode features, now I want to show you the last two enhancements, which both require the configuration to be set to reverse instead of revert. And as I mentioned earlier, as of the R2 release, this is a one-way switch. So once you change correction treatment from revert to reverse, you can no longer use any of the revert actions that I just demoed. And this limitation is on the roadmap to be removed in R3, so that changing reverse to revert and vice versa is a two-way door configuration setting. And another thing to note is that other reversal actions like transfers, partial disposals, or splits, that is on the product roadmap for R3. So for today's demo, I have a separate company set up in reverse mode so that way we can see these features. And so regarding the reverse mode environment, so first we'll talk about reversing depreciation postings. And so historically, if you posted depreciation and then realized there was an error, usually your only option in Intacct was to revert the depreciation, which deletes that original posting. And while that works in some regions, many clients who have audit frameworks, you may, you want to leave that original entry intact and create an offsetting correction. And so R2 introduces a true reverse capability so that way when you reverse the depreciation entry, Sage Intacct will go ahead and create that offsetting journal entry, and the original posting stays exactly where it's going to be. So from fixed assets management setup configuration, I just want to show again under journals and accounts, the correction treatment in this environment is set to reverse. So that means it keeps your records and creates reversing entries. And so if I go ahead and go to my assets, I'm going to go ahead and pick my East Wing conference room. And we'll go to the depreciation schedules tab. And I'm going to go ahead and open that schedule. And so for my last recent posted depreciation entry, I have a more actions, those three dots, and you'll see now that I can reverse. So if I go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and reverse it on the same day here, click reverse. Sage Intacct will go ahead and create that offsetting entry automatically. And then you'll also notice a small but a very important change is this used to be a journal entry number column, and now it's been replaced with journal entries links. And that's because once you click on it, you'll be able to see those depreciation entries that are now linked to your journal entries. So now I have my original and I also have my reversal entry here. If I go ahead and click on one of those, it brings me right to that journal entry. The last enhancement to fixed assets management is summarized depreciation postings. So if you're managing more than a handful of assets in Intacct, you've probably noticed that every depreciation entry creates its own journal entry. So if you multiply that by hundreds of assets, your GL gets really busy and really quickly. And so with Sage Intacct, R2 release, you'll now be able to group depreciation postings that share that same accounting attributes into a single summarized entry. And so that setting is under here, under depreciation settings, summarized depreciation entries. And I went ahead and already posted depreciation for a few entries already, but Sage Intacct will go ahead and roll these depreciation postings together because they share the same journal, the same posting date, the same accumulated depreciation GL account, and the same location dimension. So if any of those differ, you will get separate summaries. And so the best part is like you don't lose any visibility into that. I'm going to go ahead and go to General Ledger Journal entries and go to my fixed assets journal. And so I have a few entries that I posted for each month, but I'm going to go ahead and just look at my April. If I go ahead and look at this journal entry, it's a summarized amount. Now, if I want to know for the summarized amount which assets were part of this, if I click into either of the base debit or base credit, I'll now see those depreciation schedule entries that were all posted together. And so that concludes my portion of the Release 2 demo. The big key takeaway is that the one configuration decision I'd flag for everyone is that correction treatment setting, because as you saw today, revert versus reverse is a config setting that determines which of these features you can take advantage of. So before you flip the switch, it's definitely worth it weighing the pros and cons, and our PPS team is here to help you think through that decision. Okay. And so now I'll go ahead and hand it over to Ginger.
Thank you, Ashley. So due to time, I'm going to go through a couple things. I want to start with the purchasing. Let me share. Sorry about that. So Intacct has now the three-way match for your purchasing transactions. You want to start in your purchasing configuration, setup configuration. What you want to do is set up your automation. So if you're using AP automation with purchasing, you may be using it with a header matching. You can now do it if you override any header level matching with line level matching. The configuration is to set up at the, your entity level or top level transactions. And you want your target to be the path that you want to validate. So if you have a purchase order that you want to validate against a receiver, and then if you have a purchase invoice against the receiver as your validation. So if your workflow, like in this particular instance, it's purchase order, receiver, invoice. You could go purchase order to invoice, or you have a requisition and then a purchase order. So it just depends on your workflow. But once you have the configuration set up, then it is just importing or emailing your transactions as normal. And then what happens is you would have the transaction. Let's go to the vendor invoice. And as an example, maybe it'll show you an exception. So when you go to your upload, your automated transactions, let me move that Zoom header. You'll be able to see if there's any exceptions and you can resolve. And then if you go into that particular invoice, that vendor invoice, your exception summary, and then you'll be able to see, is there a quantity variance, a price variance, your percentages, and you'll just be able to review that prior to posting, make sure that the transactions in the workflow are matching if you need to go back to the vendor. There's a bit more of this on the process. And again, I want to be aware of the time. So I just wanted to let you guys know that that is available now for this release. Please let us know if you're using purchasing with the automation. And if you want some more information on that to go forward to the line level matching instead of just the header information. Real quick, the other couple things you can do, I want to show on the projects. So they are now adding an option under the project summary that you can display currency. So if you were to run a GL report, your GL report is going to be in USD, the base currency. But maybe you have a different transaction currency. And even though you're running the GL in the base currency of USD, you want to see what the summary would look like in that transaction currency. It defaults to blank. You can now come in and choose a currency, and you will see all of your summary information update to that currency amount. So you'll be able to see what this information would look like in the currency. Because even if you were to drill down into that, it's still running in your base currency, right? Your entity-based currency. So this just gives you an option to be able to see it in a different transaction currency. And you can always default it as blank or into the currency that you'd like to see it in on the fly in any particular one. The other main thing, and then I'm going to turn it over to Ashley, is at no time, is if you are using inventory, you have the option. A majority of best practices when you start inventory is to use the warehouse, the system transit in and out. There is these old transaction definitions, transfer in and out, but typically the majority of people are using this warehouse transfer. I only want to bring it up because the transfer in and out is not going to be supported this year. They're going to stop supporting it. So if you are using inventory and you are still using the in and out, you do want to switch over and start using the system transfers. It is faster. It is one transaction versus two. So like I said, most people are using it, but I just want to highlight that. And if you guys have any other questions regarding the three-way match for purchasing, please let us know. And with that, I will turn it back over to Ashley.
Thanks, Ginger. All right. So one thing we wanted to highlight before we wrap is beyond what was officially released in R2, Sage Intacct also has several early adopter programs available. And these are features that have been released to a limited audience and are being refined based on client feedback. So if you're interested in participating, you do get early access to functionality and that direct line into Sage Intacct's product team. And so if any of these catch your attention and you'd like to learn more or participate, please submit a ticket through the hub and we will make sure that we work with you on next steps. So now let's go ahead and take our third polling question. Of the R2 features that we've presented today, are you interested in any of the new release functionality? Okay, thank you all for responding. It's great to see that you have interest in these features, and whether you're ready to move forward or still evaluating, our PPS team is here to help. So just be sure to follow up. We'll make sure to follow up with anyone who wants to dig into that further. And so a few key takeaways from today, you've learned the new R2 features. You can recall the enhancements that are most important to your day-to-day tasks and the impact each on your organization. And remember, you can reach out to us anytime to help with release management. If you do need assistance with enabling any of the R2 features that we demoed today or would like additional training for your team, we're here to help. And so you can either reach out to your PPS contact directly or submit a ticket through the CC Request Hub. And one other cross-country service that we want to highlight is our Sage Intacct Health Check. That health check is an objective assessment of how effectively your system is configured, utilized, and integrated. So it goes beyond core setup to evaluate your end-to-end business performance, and that outcome is a prioritized optimization roadmap. So if this sounds helpful, please reach out and we'll get a conversation started. And now we have our last polling question for today's session. When was the last time your organization conducted a health check? And just take a few seconds to submit this because this is the last polling question. Okay, so whether it's been recent or been a while, a health check is one of the most impactful ways to make sure your system's still working as hard as it can for your business. So we'll be sure to reach out to anyone who maybe wants to learn a little bit more about this. And just a quick reminder on what to expect after today's session. Within 5 business days, Cross Country will email a certificate of completion to participants who attended and answered at least 3 polling questions. And there will also be a link to that course eval in the email. So please take a few minutes to complete it while the session is fresh, because your feedback is genuinely helpful to us so that we can improve future webinars. One last quick note for those earning CPE credits. If you have any issues or questions, please direct them to Susan, and her email is shown here on the screen. And I know we ran out of time to answer any questions, but if we didn't get to your question today, we will make sure to follow up with you after the session. So thank you again for joining us today for our cross-country R2 release demo webinar. And on behalf of our PPS team, we truly appreciate your time and look forward to helping you make the most of the R2 release. Have a great rest of your day. Bye.